So this beauty that's collecting dust up on my wall of snowboards is an old Morrow MP. This was my first real snowboard. I had a buddy that had a black snow, and then I kind of went and bought my own Canadian flyer board, which was kind of my first snowboard. It was really my first real snowboard, but this was my first real snowboard that I bought from The Edge way back in 1991. And it was funny that I worked there for 12 years, and it wasn't until probably about 8 years in that I found out I was actually the first one to ever buy a snowboard from them. And this was the board, the MP, which stood for multi-pro. It was kind of like their all mountain, go anywhere, do anything board. Obviously a little bit of a pointed nose, that flat tail on it. Got these really crazy aggressive kicks, which is funny to see just how big those are, and that companies realize that it's actually better to knock those kicks down a little bit because this just plows snow. But super funny to see these boards and feeling the weight on this thing. It's kind of insane that we were ever able to do anything on these things, because without bindings, this is probably as heavy as most of these other boards with bindings nowadays. But Morrow definitely was one of those companies that was really ahead of its time. And when it came to construction on their boards, they didn't do wood cores. This thing actually has a foam core in it. And then the cool thing about that is it's foam, but it's fully wrapped in fiberglass. And I don't remember how they were shaping the foam cores at this time. When we get into some of the little bit later years, it's pretty cool. I did get to go to the factory and see, and they would literally shoot the exact amount of foam they needed into a mold, and then that would make the core. And it was really cool because that meant that every single core was identical. So no matter what board you got, there's no chance, like with wood where there can be variables and no two trees grow the same, you basically would get the exact same ride out of every single board. And then to make it durable, they did a torsion box construction, where it's basically, instead of laying fiberglass down, where usually it's, you know, your base, fiberglass, your core, fiberglass, top sheet, sandwich it all together, cut it out. Well, these ones, the way that they did it is they took that core and they had a fiberglass sock basically that was wrapped around the outside of it. So they literally, exactly like you think about the socks on your feet, usually it's a tube, it's woven all the way around, and that's exactly the way they did the fiberglass on these things. So it was literally a sock of fiberglass all the way around, and it was a tube. Think about how strong tubes are, especially when you're looking at things like fishing poles or tent poles and stuff like that, where it's fiberglass tubes, and they're very, very strong. And this is just that on steroids. And then they could really program the flex of the board with how the foam core was shaped, making it thinner, making it thicker. And again, I don't remember how they did it exactly with these boards. They might have done that mold way, but they might have also shaped it by hand. I'd have to really check back onto that, or if anybody happens to know, definitely leave a comment down below if you know or can remember how they used to shape these cores when they first were doing it. But made boards that were really strong. It was kind of crazy. And another thing that's really cool about this thing too is you notice there's no inserts in it. So back then you would actually drill your bindings right into the board, and there was a metal plate in here. So you didn't actually drill into wood, because obviously there's no wood, but they would put metal plate inside the board, and then you'd have metal screws going into a metal plate, and they had this jig, which I really wish I had. It'd be kind of a cool thing just to hang on the wall. But you would literally mount on the board, you would figure out what your stance is, and then they had very specific bits, and you would just go drill in the holes, pop your bindings on there, and then send these screws in there with these really deep threads. And it did give you a really strong bond because it was metal holding on to metal built inside of the boards. It was one of those things that a lot of people didn't really understand, and they thought foam cores, those things are going to break, but honestly they were some of the strongest boards out there, and they rode incredibly well too. And that's one of the things I want to do, is maybe get out on some of these other boards that were kind of a little bit later that could still throw bindings on with the 4x4 hole pattern, because that was a big thing about them, is they really did ride the exact same on day one as they did on day 1,000. But definitely one of the boards I love to have up on the wall. I wish it was the actual board I rode. The actual board I had got sold, and I got a new board, but my brother happened to find this one at Play It Again Sports for like 50-60 bucks, and he grabbed it for me. Just kind of a cool thing to have on the wall, and really just kind of take you back to those days when I had my first snowboard and actually got to go to the first real ski resort.